Billionaire CEO got drunk and tortured, the girl all night, and she got pregnant. The city was alive that night, buzzing with the kind of energy only a billionaire's party could ignite. The mansion loomed over the skyline, its lights glittering like stars against the dark canvas of the evening. Inside, laughter echoed through marble halls, glasses clinked in celebration, and music throbbed with an intensity that matched the crowd's excitement. But beneath all the glamour and glitz lay a story no one saw coming. A tale of power, recklessness, and consequences that would change lives forever. At the center of it all stood Marcus Kane, the enigmatic CEO, whose name had become synonymous with success. With his sharp suits, commanding presence, and a reputation for being untouchable, he was the man everyone wanted to know, but few truly understood. Tonight, though, something was different. Marcus wasn't just celebrating another business triumph. He was drowning something deeper, something darker. For weeks, rumors had swirled about, cracks forming in his empire, whispers of scandals waiting to explode into public view. And as the champagne flowed freely, so did his inhibitions. By midnight, Marcus was far from sober, his polished exterior giving way to raw emotion and reckless behavior. Across the room stood Elena Carter, a young woman who seemed out of place amidst the opulence surrounding her. She wasn't part of this world, at least not yet. A talented graphic designer trying to make her mark, she had come to the party reluctantly, tagging along with a friend who insisted it would be good networking. But as the hours ticked by, Elena found herself increasingly uncomfortable. The air felt heavy, charged with an undercurrent of tension she couldn't quite put her finger on. Still, there was something magnetic about Marcus Kane. Even in his drunken state, he exuded charisma, drawing people toward him like moths to a flame. When their eyes met across the crowded room, neither of them could have guessed how much that moment would alter their fates. What happened next is a blur, even to those who were there. Witnesses recall seeing Elena leave the main hall, looking pale and shaken. Some say they spotted Marcus following, close behind, his steps unsteady but purposeful. Others claim they heard raised voices coming from one of the private rooms upstairs. Whatever occurred behind closed doors that night remains shrouded in mystery. But when Eleanor emerged hours later, her expression told a story more powerful than words ever could. Her mascara was smudged, her dress askew, and her hands trembled as she clutched her bag tightly to her chest. It was clear she'd been through something harrowing, though she refused to speak about it to anyone at the time. Days turned into weeks, and life moved on. Or at least it seemed to. For Elena, however, nothing felt normal anymore. The once bright future she'd envisioned for herself now felt clouded by uncertainty. She withdrew from friends, stopped attending social events, and threw herself into work in an attempt to distract herself from the memories that haunted her. Then came the realization that changed everything. She was pregnant. At first, shock overwhelmed her. How could this happen? What would she do now? As the reality sank in, anger began to simmer beneath the surface. This wasn't just her problem. It involved someone else too. Someone with immense power and influence. Meanwhile, Marcus returned to his usual routine, burying himself in meetings and boardroom battles, as if nothing unusual had happened. To the outside world, he remained the picture of composure, the mastermind steering his company toward greater heights. But inside, guilt gnawed at him relentlessly. He remembered fragments of that night, flashes of Eleanor's face, the sound of her voice pleading with him to stop. But piecing them together felt impossible. Was it possible he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross? And if so, What did that mean for him, for her, for both of them? As news of Elena's pregnancy began to spread within certain circles, speculation ran rampant. Who was the father? How had such a scandal managed to stay hidden for so long? Whispers grew louder until they reached Marcus himself, forcing him to confront the truth head-on. At first, denial consumed him. There was no way he could be responsible, he told himself. Yet deep down, doubt lingered. The timing matched too perfectly, and the weight of his actions, or rather his lack of memory, pressed down on him like a ton of bricks. This is where our story takes a darker turn. While Marcus grapples with his conscience, Elena finds herself facing a choice that will define the rest of her life. Does she keep the baby, knowing the challenges ahead? Does she seek justice, risking her career and safety in the process? Or does she walk away, hoping to leave the past behind and start anew? Each option comes with its own set of complications, none of which offer a clear path forward. And then there's the question of accountability. If Marcus is the father, what does that mean for him personally and professionally? His empire rests on a foundation of control and precision, yet here he stands, vulnerable and exposed. Will he step up and take responsibility, or will he use his wealth and influence to sweep the matter under the rug? The stakes are high, not just for these two individuals, but for everyone connected to them. Friends, family, colleagues, all will feel the ripple effects of decisions made in the heat of desperation. But perhaps the most compelling aspect of this story isn't the scandal itself, but the human emotions driving it. Love, fear, regret, hope. They're all woven into the fabric of what happened that night and its aftermath. Can forgiveness exist in a situation like this? Is redemption even possible? These are questions without easy answers, ones that will unfold slowly as events progress. As we dive deeper into this narrative, prepare yourself for twists you won't see coming and revelations that will challenge your assumptions. You'll witness moments of courage and cowardice, strength and weakness, love and betrayal. Above all, you'll see how quickly lives can spiral out of control when power and vulnerability collide. So buckle up, because this journey is far from over. We've only scratched the surface of what really happened between Marcus Kane and Eleanor Carter. Their story is messy, complicated, and deeply human, and it's about to get a whole lot more intense. Stay tuned to find out what happens next, because trust me, you won't want to miss it. Elena's days became a blur of sleepless nights and endless questions. She spent hours staring at her reflection in the mirror, searching for answers in her own eyes. How had she ended up here? What was she supposed to do now? The weight of the situation pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. At first, she thought about running, packing her bags and disappearing to someplace where no one knew her name. But deep down, she knew that wasn't an option. Running wouldn't solve anything. It would only delay the inevitable reckoning. Her mind kept circling back to Marcus Kane. She remembered his charm, the way he could command a room with just a glance. That night, though, none of that charisma had been directed at her in kindness. Instead, she recalled feeling trapped, powerless against the force of his intoxication and the unchecked authority that came with his status. She hated herself for not fighting harder, for letting it happen. But how could she have fought back? He was a man who always got what he wanted, and that night she had been too stunned, too scared to resist. As weeks passed, Eleanor began piecing together fragments of the evening. She reached out to friends who had attended the party, hoping they might remember something, anything, that could help her understand what had transpired. Most were reluctant to talk, either out of loyalty to Marcus or fear of being dragged into something messy. But one friend, Sarah, finally broke her silence. "I saw you two leave together," Sarah admitted hesitantly, over coffee one afternoon. "You looked upset, but I thought, I don't know, maybe you were okay with it." "God, Elena, I'm so sorry." Sarah's apology didn't ease the knot in Elena's stomach. It only made her feel more isolated, like she was carrying this burden, alone. Still, the conversation gave her a sliver of clarity. Marcus had followed her upstairs after their encounter in the hall. Whatever happened next took place in private, away from prying eyes. The realization sent chills down her spine. If no one else knew the truth, then it was up to her to decide what came next, and every choice felt impossible. Meanwhile, Marcus wrestled with his own demons. His initial denial slowly morphed into unease as details emerged. He started avoiding social gatherings, cancelling meetings, and spending long hours locked in his office. Colleagues noticed the change, but chalked it up to stress from work. Only his closest confidant, Daniel, dared to confront him. "You've been acting strange lately," Daniel said during a rare moment when they were alone. "Is everything all right?" Marcus hesitated, torn between keeping his secret buried and unloading the guilt suffocating him. Finally, he confessed. Not everything, but enough to hint at the turmoil brewing inside. "I think I messed up, Dan," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "There's this girl. Something happened, and now she's pregnant." Daniel's expression shifted from concern to alarm. "What do you mean something happened? Did you—" He trailed off, unwilling to finish the sentence. "I don't know," Marcus snapped, frustration bubbling over. "That's the problem. I don't know. I was drunk, and now she says she's carrying my kid. What am I supposed to do with that?" The admission hung heavy in the air between them. For once, Daniel didn't have a solution. All he could offer was advice rooted in damage control. "You need to figure out if it's true," he said carefully. "And if it is, well, you can't ignore it. People like us don't get to pretend things didn't happen." The words struck a nerve. Marcus had built his empire on decisiveness, on never backing down from a challenge. Yet here he was, paralyzed by uncertainty. He tried to push the issue aside, focusing instead on expanding his company's reach and securing lucrative deals. But no matter how many contracts he signed or boardrooms he dominated, the shadow of that night lingered. It haunted him in quiet moments, whispering reminders of the life-altering decision looming before him. Back in her small apartment, Elena faced her own crossroads. After much deliberation, she decided to schedule a meeting with Marcus, not to accuse him, but to demand answers. She owed it to herself and to the child growing inside her to confront him face to face. The thought terrified her. What if he denied everything? Worse yet, what if he lashed out? Power dynamics weren't exactly in her favor, and she knew better than most how easily people like Marcus could crush those beneath them. When the day of the meeting arrived, Elena dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made her feel strong. Despite the storm raging inside her, she walked into the sleek corporate building, housing Kane Enterprises, acutely aware of the stares following her every move. By the time she reached Marcus's office, her nerves were frayed, her palms slick with sweat. Taking a deep breath, she knocked on the door. "Come in," came the curt reply. When she stepped inside, Marcus looked up from his desk, surprise flickering across his features. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken tension. Then Eleanor broke the silence. "We need to talk," she said, firmly, her voice steadier than she expected. "About that night, and about the baby." Marcus froze, his jaw tightening. For a split second, she thought he might deny it altogether. But then he sighed, rubbing his temples as if trying to ward off an impending headache. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's talk." What followed was a tense exchange, filled with accusations, denials, and reluctant admissions. Elena recounted her version of events, her voice trembling with emotion. Marcus listened, his expression unreadable, until she finished. Then he spoke, his tone measured, but tinged with regret. "I don't remember everything," he admitted. "But if even half of what you're saying is true, I owe you an explanation, and maybe more." The conversation marked a turning point, but not necessarily a resolution. Both walked away with conflicting emotions, unsure of what the future held. As days turned into weeks, whispers of the scandal began leaking to the press. Reporters camped outside Elena's apartment, hounding her for statements. Social media erupted with speculation, painting her as either a victim or a gold digger depending on who you asked. Through it all, Marcus remained eerily silent, fueling rumors that he was plotting some kind of cover-up. With tensions mounting and secrets threatening to spill into the public eye, the stage was set for a confrontation neither Elena nor Marcus could escape. Each decision they made brought them closer to a climax that promised to unravel lives, reputations, and relationships. The question hanging over everyone's heads was simple yet devastating. Who would come out on top, and at what cost? As the clock ticked toward the inevitable showdown, alliances shifted, motives came into question, and trust crumbled under the weight of betrayal. Every move mattered now, every word carrying the potential to destroy or redeem. And still, the truth remained elusive, hidden behind layers of lies, guilt, and fear. Would justice prevail, or would power triumph once again? The answer lay just beyond the horizon, waiting to be revealed in a moment that would change everything, for better or worse. As the scandal reached a fever pitch, Elena found herself at the center of a media storm that refused to die down. Reporters hounded her every move, while anonymous sources leaked bits of information that painted conflicting pictures of what had really happened that night. Some claimed she was manipulating the situation for financial gain, while others argued she was a victim, caught in the crosshairs of Marcus Kane's unchecked power. The pressure mounted until it felt like the walls were closing in on her. Marcus, too, was under siege. His once spotless reputation was crumbling, with shareholders questioning his leadership and employees whispering about his moral compass, or lack thereof. For someone who thrived on control, this chaos was unbearable. He began making desperate attempts to contain the fallout, hiring high-profile lawyers and PR teams to spin the narrative in his favor. Yet no amount of damage control could erase the growing sense of accountability looming over him. The turning point came when Elena received an unexpected call from a journalist named Claire Harper. Claire had been investigating Marcus Kane for months, digging into allegations of misconduct that predated the party by years. What she uncovered shocked even her. A pattern of behavior suggesting Marcus wasn't just reckless, but predatory. When Claire approached Eleanor with the evidence, offering to publish the story alongside her testimony, Eleanor hesitated. Going public meant exposing herself to scrutiny and judgment, but staying silent meant letting Marcus walk away unscathed. It was a risk she wasn't sure she could take, until she realized she wasn't fighting just for herself anymore. She was fighting for her unborn child. With trembling hands, Eleanor agreed to share her story. Together with Claire, they crafted a narrative that balanced truth with sensitivity, ensuring the focus remained on holding Marcus accountable rather than vilifying him outright. The article hit the internet like a bombshell, igniting outrage across social platforms and sparking protests outside Kane Enterprises' headquarters. People demanded answers, justice, and reform. The tide had turned, and there was no going back. For Marcus, the publication marked the beginning of the end. Shareholders called emergency meetings, threatening to oust him if he didn't step down. Voluntarily, allies distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with the mounting scandal. Even Daniel, his trusted confidant, urged him to face the consequences head-on. "You can't keep running from this," Daniel said during one of their final conversations. "Own up to what you've done, or let it destroy you completely." In the weeks that followed, Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone. He resigned as CEO of his company. In a brief statement, he acknowledged his role in the events surrounding Elena and expressed regret for the harm he'd caused. While some dismissed it as a hollow attempt to salvage his legacy, others saw it as a rare moment of vulnerability from a man who rarely showed weakness. Whether sincere or calculated, the move signaled a shift, a reckoning not just for Marcus, but for the culture of privilege and impunity he represented. Elena watched the fallout unfold from afar, her heart heavy with mixed emotions. On one hand, she felt vindicated, knowing her voice had sparked change. On the other, she couldn't shake the lingering pain of what she'd endured. As the dust settled, she decided to channel her energy into something meaningful. Using the settlement money from Marcus's legal team, she founded a non-profit dedicated to supporting survivors of abuse and advocating for systemic reforms within powerful industries. Her journey hadn't been easy, but it had given her purpose and hope for a better future. Months later, Elena stood before a crowd at the nonprofit's inaugural gala, her baby bump visible beneath a flowing dress. She spoke candidly about her experience, urging others to speak their truth without fear. "This isn't just my story," she said, her voice steady despite the tears glistening in her eyes. "It's a reminder that we all deserve respect, safety, and justice, no matter who we are or where we come from." The audience erupted in applause, moved by her courage and resilience. As for Marcus, he retreated from the spotlight, retreating to a quiet life, far removed from the world he once dominated. Rumors swirled about whether he truly regretted his actions or simply sought to escape the consequences. Either way, his absence left a void, one filled by new leaders determined to build a more ethical and compassionate corporate landscape. The end. The story of Marcus Kane and Elena Carter became more than a tale of scandal. It became a catalyst for change. It reminded people that power unchecked breeds destruction, but accountability, however painful, can pave the way for healing. And as Elena cradled her newborn child for the first time, she knew one thing for certain: though the past would always shape her, it wouldn't define her or her son. They were survivors, and their story was just beginning.